Hi, everyone. This is Heather Hodges. I'm an organizational psychologist. Welcome to my show. This is the place where we say I'm in to creativity, bold thinking, transformational growth, and meaningful conversations. Today's guest is my friend, Natalie Venable, the founder and CEO of Thrive Healthcare Solutions, where she leverages her wealth of experience to offer consulting services nationwide. She specializes in enhancing quality outcomes, survey preparedness, regulatory compliance, and operational efficiencies. Natalie empowers home health and hospice agencies to excel in their service delivery. Natalie, my friend, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I am thrilled to death that you said I'm in to coming on my podcast and sharing your background, your experience, your wisdom with our listeners. So thank you again.
It's my pleasure.
Well, so you are building this extraordinary career. So let's back up. Let's start at the beginning. What's your educational background, your clinical background, and how did you end up founding Thrive Healthcare Solutions?
Yeah, so it's a long story. I went to college initially to become a civil engineer.
Wait, okay, hold the phone.
Yeah.
Civil engineering.
Civil engineering. I was 1 year away from graduating with a civil engineering degree. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. And then right around differential equations, I decided that math should still have numbers, and there weren't any numbers left. It was letters, lots of letters. And I had some friends who were in undergrad for OT, and I was like, "What are you doing? What is that? What does that mean?" And I was honestly in a bit of a desperate place because I didn't know what to do. And so I quickly switched, and I had most of the undergrad requirements for OT. I did that final year in undergrad for occupational science and went straight into grad school for occupational therapy. And I loved it, and it was great, and it fit me well. I was still a little like, what is this again? Then we went into our clinicals, and I quickly figured out, this is what occupational therapy is. This is about people, helping people. I've worked in outpatient settings. I've worked in skilled nursing facilities, home health, pediatrics. And home health is really where I found my niche, I think, as an occupational therapist, being in people's homes, meeting them in their environments. I think home settings really embody occupational therapy as it should be. Activities of daily living, instrumental activities of daily living, the things you need to do to be independent on your own, the things that we take for granted. So I became a preceptor. So I was training all of the other onboarding clinicians, loved it, but I was feeling a little stagnant, like I could do more. I think I have more to offer. So there was a sales position that was open, and I thought, it was a little clinical and sales, like a combo mix. So I still got to do some clinical stuff, but I was also selling our services. And so I was already really selling service, because you come in as an occupational therapist and you say, "I'm the occupational therapist," and your patients say, "Honey, I'm already retired." I'm like, well, that's not what I do. But so selling the services that I could provide to those patients. And so being able to take it to caregivers, assisted living facilities. And I really did well in that role. I excelled. I was promoted. I had a team. And then they dissolved my role, which gave me the opportunity to jump back over into like the clinical world. And from there, I jumped into a quality role. And that's where my that was really the starting point for where I am now.
Wow.
So quality.
Okay, wait. I just want to pause you right there. Holy smokes. Okay, starting with a civil engineering, you realize that differential equations, like math, should need numbers. Okay, first of all, that's hilarious. And then going into OT, doing a bunch of different careers and different settings for OT, loving the bedside, loving the patient aspect of it, but then really understanding that home care is your calling.
Mm-hmm.
And loving to work with patients in their homes. Then you went into a sales role.
Mm-hmm.
Then you transitioned into quality, and this is your real calling.
Yeah.
This is where your heart sings. This is what you love to do.
This is my passion.
Okay, take it from there. Now that I'm caught up, my goodness, what a career.
So that sales role though, that was a huge stepping stone for me, because that's where I learned how to have a crucial conversation. That's where I learned to go from bud to boss. Mm-hmm. That's where I learned self-awareness. That's where that really started to set in. That's where I learned how to have conversations and, coming to someone for something who has no interest in you whatsoever and getting them to understand where you're coming from, that transferred over into my quality role that I was doing, because now I'm working with operational leaders and I'm saying, let's work on this, let's work on this, let's work on that. And they're saying, do you see all that I have to do? I don't have time to focus on all of your stuff, Natalie. And so I found ways to partner with my operational counterparts that, they knew I was going to keep it short, keep it simple. They knew I was part of their team. They knew they could rely on me. They knew we were going to move the dial, but that I wasn't going to take up all of their time, that I understood they had multiple priorities, and me and quality were just one of them. So I was able to kind of maneuver through that role into a director role, which was one of my favorites. It was so good. So many good memories. I learned so much. I had this amazing team. Huge organization. And then I moved from there into director of quality for a much smaller organization. Just in the state of Texas, had no quality department. I was the quality department.
Wow.
So I was able to take the things that I learned. How do you find resources related to quality? How do you know what's changing? How do you partner with your operations and sales, with your field clinicians to get buy-in? All of that refinement, from starting in the field to being in sales and never really understanding how it all connects until you've been in it for a minute. But I built a quality department at the last place that I was an actual employee. And when I left to start my consulting business, I handed that off, and it's still going really well. I consult on the side for that organization, and they're still running that quality department just as I set it up, and it works really well for them. So it's been really fun and unexpected.
That is so great. Well, what was it that propelled you to launch your own company?
That's a great question, because starting a business is not something that I knew how to do. There aren't really a lot of people in my family who own their own businesses. I was very intimidated, afraid of failure. I'm not good enough at this. I've not been in this long enough. But there was just this little seed of a dream inside of me. And it wouldn't go away. And I really felt like I needed to obey that urge to do it. I became a CHAP certified consultant for both home health and hospice. And when I went through that training, I really realized that I did know a bit, and I had just built this other quality department at another organization that worked. And what I found was people from past places I had worked were calling me to ask me questions. And I thought, well, maybe I am good at this. I don't know everything, but what I do know, I'm pretty good at it. And I'm an Enneagram One. I want to give people the right information, and I don't want to give wrong information. So my husband, he is retired Marine Corps. He has a master's in business administration with organizational development. And he said, I'll hold your hand. We'll start the business together. I'll help you. Let's just pick a name. Let's just start there. So he listed out some baby steps for me, walked me through it, and it's just been snowball full force ever since. I'm really blessed. It's been wonderful.
Yeah. And, I've watched you on this journey, and I've seen how busy you've become. Like, it's hard to get on your calendar. You have a lot of people reaching out to you. You're busy. You're doing a lot of great work throughout the country. So congratulations on being an entrepreneur and starting your own company.
It's been 2 years. I know.
Wow. And that's usually that 2-year marker is the make or break point for new companies. So congratulations. You've made it.
Yeah. It's hard. It's really intimidating. Yeah. It's on you, but it's so rewarding. And the work-life balance that I have, that to not be in the corporate rat race, it's just, and I know that works for some people, but it wasn't working for me anymore.
Yeah. So. Well, I'm so glad that you have found your true calling, and that you are able to help so many people from your experience and your knowledge and your wisdom. So congratulations.
Yeah. And you too.
It's a good world out here. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you mentioned the Enneagram, and that you are an Enneagram One, because as we were preparing for this podcast, we were talking about what it feels like and the realities of leading in the gray, like leading in these gray spaces where there isn't always a clear black and white. And I thought, wow, Natalie's, and I was thinking about this in my head as we were prepping for this interview. I'm like, wow, I know she's a one. This is phenomenal that she is existing, living, working, leading in the gray area. Because, you've worked in a lot of spaces where every decision impacts patients or families or referral sources. And there's rarely, there's not always a script to follow. So I'm curious, can you describe what we're talking about here? What does leadership look like on the ground in home health and in hospice? And what makes it so uniquely challenging?
So there are so many things that I could start with. The most recent thing I'll talk about for home health. In January, there was an update to the conditions of participation to include a new regulation that's called the acceptance to service requirement. So every home health agency now that's Medicare certified has to have a policy on acceptance to service. And that requirement has home health agencies kind of lay out what types of services can you provide? Can you provide them in a timely manner, which is also a requirement. We have to admit patients timely. And what do you do when you can't accept patients to service and provide the right services timely? And so out in the world of home health, boots on the ground, what's happening is it's hard to keep staff. The turnover is high. A lot of agencies contract with therapy companies, so all of their therapists are really employees of a contract company. And so when we're thinking about this acceptance to service, which seemed like a gray area, like what does this mean? How do we write these policies? What is our survey going to look for? and you think about the operators wanting to grow, we want to provide good care, we want to accept these referrals. You think about the clinicians. I'm doing all I can. I have 8 visits today. I'm driving 100 miles a day. You think about sales, who needs to get those referrals in because that's part of how they're paid, usually through a bonus structure based on the admissions, based on the referrals. But CMS is saying, hey, if you can't admit this patient timely, maybe they've had a stroke and they need nursing PT and they've got significant swallowing issues, they need a speech therapist. Mm-hmm. If you can't staff that speech therapist timely, you really don't have any business admitting them. And that's what that acceptance to service policy is about. So if your contract company says we can get them out there in 4 weeks, then we got to figure out what to do. We got to talk to the physician. We got to communicate that to sales. And so it is difficult to maneuver. But when everybody understands generally what we're required to do in home health, which is sometimes gray, it helps set expectations. And so it's not ops saying, I don't want to do that, sales, or clinicians saying, I don't have time. It's about doing the right thing. And that is the right thing, right? If you can't care for a patient, you shouldn't accept it. That's the business we're in, is caring for people. And so I've been helping people maneuver the acceptance to service policy, and it's been very great.
Wow. But that's a good example of just, an ethical dilemma in the gray area. Mm-hmm. Like doing what's right and what's compliant may not always feel like the right thing, because at the end of the day, home health and hospice is about patients. Mm-hmm. and patient care.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I know that there are times when, like we said, when doing what's right doesn't clearly align with what's compliant. I'm wondering if you can share a moment when you had to navigate that tension.
So a thought that comes to mind about what's compliant versus what's right. A lot of times we define what's right for ourselves, and sometimes it's right and sometimes it's not right. I'll give you an example that I'm thinking of.
Okay.
So an agency one time that I worked with, they had admitted a patient that required authorization. And so they would get approval for so many visits, and then they would have to go back, ask for more authorization for more visits. Well, this patient had a wound. And it was a pretty significant wound. It did require the skills of a nurse to treat. And the patient's insurance, for whatever reason, decided they weren't going to authorize more visits.
Oh, wow.
So
even though the patient still had an active wound.
Okay. Yes. Welcome to managed care. That's a whole other thing. So the agency felt, well, we're not getting paid to do this. We don't have authorization. It would be right for us to discharge this patient. Well, compliance says this patient has a wound. We should probably keep taking care of this wound because that's what the physicians asked us to do. We have orders to do this. We're just not going to get paid for it. And so there was definitely conflict. Some people would argue the right thing to do is take care of the wound. That's what I would think is the right thing to do. But there was definitely this. Some people felt it was right to discharge. We're not getting paid. Some people felt it was right to take care of the wound and not get paid. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, the reason this came to light is because the surveyor pulled that record. And she cited them for discharging the patient with an open wound. And, what made it worse is that there was no evidence in the record that the home health agency had taken any type of steps to refer that patient to another home health agency or communicated the authorization issue to the physician. Mm-hmm. And so it looked like a hot potato dropped.
Yeah.
Which, hospitalization risks, infection. Uh-huh. And discharging because you're not getting paid, that wasn't the right thing to do in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be difficult to maneuver. And, you know, knowing the regulations is a huge piece of that. And that also can be difficult because there's so many.
And they change.
And they change. And when you're running a branch, an office, and you're hiring and you're firing and you're onboarding and you're seeing patients in the field, that's a lot to manage.
And I am so grateful that you are out there staying on top of the regs, because you're right. Home care and hospice, they don't have the time to stay on top of it. They change all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're nuanced. You're like, what does that mean? Can somebody interpret that for me?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So I think having a resource, whether it's a quality department or a consultant, it's so valuable because it can really help you stay out of trouble in the future.
Well, y'all heard it. If you are needing quality assistance, call Natalie Venable at Thrive Healthcare. Gosh, Natalie, I'm so glad you're out there doing this work. Well, can we talk Enneagram?
Yeah.
That's like having a guest on my show who knows their Enneagram number, who's worked with it, who's a leader. It's such a treat. And so can you tell us your Enneagram journey? How did you learn about your Enneagram type? And how has that impacted your leadership? And, you know, maybe speak about how it impacts your work as an entrepreneur.
Okay. So I found out my Enneagram number. I took a short test, very short test. And someone actually said to me, Natalie, I just found out I'm a 1. I think you're a 1 too. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. She said, take this test. And it just happened to be that I was a 1. And I started reading about 1s, and I was offended. I was like, no, that's not me. I'm not rigid. I am not, yes or no, I have to be right all the time. I was like, that's not me. Oh, it is. It is. So I went through a class, and I really learned I learned more about the Enneagram. A healthy 1 versus a not so healthy 1. The numbers associated with your number. I read The Road Back to You. Mind blowing. And I started thinking about why I am the way that I am, the way that I was raised. And then that's when it started to really make sense. And I started to pay attention to the things like when I'm at my best and I'm not rigid and I'm not, here, just let me do it. I'll do it the right way the first time. When am I not like that? And I started to kind of analyze, like, when am I in my safe space? When am I kind to people? When I let other people drive their own ideas. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and Natalie's way is not always the right way.
Dropping wisdom now.
Yeah. So I just kind of started to sit in that self-awareness. And that started when I was in that sales role. And I really just tried to sit back and I, realizing that other people aren't the same as me. They have different motivators, different fears. We're all different. And so that really helped me to be more intentional about the way that I approach people, not just for sales, but for the people that I was leading. And so as I moved to different departments and was in different roles and, becoming a leader again, the Enneagram was a foundational piece of every maneuver that I made on the chessboard, all of it. From how I led to explaining why I was leading the way I was leading to my team or to the people that I was reporting to, how I, if I had to discipline someone, thinking through that, removing the emotional side of it, going back to what I've learned about crucial conversations and just resolving conflict in general, breaking it down for people to where the emotions just removed from it. And I think that really helped me be more respected as a leader because I was fair, or at least I tried my very best to be.
Mm-hmm.
It was also very life-changing in my personal relationships, the way that I interacted with my family, my spouse. When I learned his Enneagram number, that was just, and even to this day, he knows my number, and we know how to walk next to each other and respect each other's differences. Moving into a consultant role, founding a business, I'm encountering lots of people all over the nation in different walks of life, in different stages of life, different experience, and just learning how to meet them where they are and finding a space where they can hear me, that they can identify what they think their issue is. We can boil it down, root cause it, and then they can hear my solution that I have. And obviously I'm not going to know what their Enneagram is, but being able to listen to the way they present themselves or the way they phrase their sentences, the emotion with which they respond, their body language, it helps me determine what's the best way for me to approach this where I can help you. Mm-hmm. And I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but I want to help people solve problems. And I know that they may want to do it a little bit differently, and I'm okay with that. As long as I can help you and you can get where you want to be, your patients are taken care of, your outcomes are improving, that's all I want. And if I was so rigid that I couldn't allow that, I would not have a business that was growing or successful, thriving. Right.
It's in the name.
It's in the name. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. What a journey. What a beautiful story, too. I like to think about superpowers and shadows in the Enneagram. And can you tell us a little bit more about, and own it, girl, what is your superpower as an Enneagram One?
Oh, my superpower as an Enneagram One. I'm going to say this, and I'm hoping that you can break it down because you have before. I've told you this story. But I was on a team, and the leader, I had my annual evaluation, and I'd done really well. I had come in, it was my first year. I was doing really well with the areas that I was partnered with. They were progressing, growing. And I was in a market where the people before me really hadn't gained a lot of traction. And so she was like, I don't know what you're doing, but she said, it's like you're a master manipulator. You can get people to do what you want them to do. And it's what they want to do too. They just don't know it. And I was a little offended by that because
of the word manipulator.
Yes, there's no part of me that's trying to manipulate anyone at all. But when I sit down with somebody, I just really try hard to put myself in their shoes and what are they going through? What is on their plate? I know I have a deliverable. They have deliverables. But how do we partner? How do I get in and partner with them? And if I come in like a bulldozer, that's not going to work. And so I don't come in like a bulldozer. I don't, I also don't just twinkle toes around it and say, could you please? I'm like, okay, we've got something to do here. How are we going to work together to make that happen? And I think when people realize that doesn't mean I need 20 hours of your week. That doesn't mean we've got to write 37 performance improvement plans. That just means we need some strategy that's very intentional. And that's my secret sauce.
Yeah.
Okay. So out.
Question for you, because that's a beautiful superpower. If we remove the word manipulator, what would you put in instead? You're a master at...
engagement, maybe.
Yeah, I can see that. So getting the engagement,
Yeah.
pulling
I
that
don't know
out of
that I
them.
even like the word influence because, I can think of people who've said, Natalie, I saw you coming and I was like, oh, somebody's going to ask me to do more stuff. Back when I was working for organizations and they said, that's not what it turned out to be. Like, I felt like you were my partner.
Mm-hmm.
You were helping me be
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah. And that's what help looks like.
Yeah, that's what engagement is.
Engagement.
That's
Okay.
not manipulation.
No. Well, what about the shadow side of your Enneagram type? What would you say that is?
Working through fear and just the negative commentary that I give myself all the time. I have to do a lot of positive self-talk, a lot of validation, especially now as an entrepreneur. I don't have a team, the same team that I work with every day who were my friends and who, poured into me and I poured into them. Being an entrepreneur is very lonely. And the people that you're working with, they're your clients and they're not always there to pour into you. You're there to provide a service and to do a good job. And hopefully you can get to that point. But sometimes it's it can feel very transactional. Can you do this? Yes. And that's kind of all they want. And that's okay. But for me, kind of working through just my own self-talk, which we ones are known for. And then if I get in an unhealthy place, I can start to get rigid again. But I know I recognize it. And so I know when I get to those places, I need to step away. I need to go for a walk. Maybe I need to take a day off and kind of reset myself. I have scheduled time that I have where I have my meeting with God about my business and where it's going and how I need to maneuver this endeavor, because it's scary to maneuver on my own. Of course, my husband gives me feedback too. He's
What's his number?
He's an 8.
He's those crazy 8s.
Yeah, usually there's not a lot of cushion around.
Yeah.
But he's also my biggest fan, and I know that. I know that. I know. Yeah. So.
Wow.
It's good.
That's so cool. Well, tell him hi from another 8. So.
Well,
I'm curious, what would you say to someone who just found out that they are an Enneagram One? What encouragement would you give them?
If you just found out you're an Enneagram One, my encouragement to you would be to recognize when you're doubting yourself or talking negatively to yourself, even if it's not out loud. If you're in the spiral in your head, the negative self-talk, stop it. Say out loud to yourself, I'm a good person. I'm enough. What did you do good today? You did something good today. I know you say it out loud, because when you say it out loud, it stops the spiral. You cannot get caught up in that. And then I would also say, when you're working with folks and you're a one, recognize that there's more than one way to achieve a goal. And sometimes when we step back, because us as ones, we usually if I give you a route, it's probably going to be right because I've researched it. I know I've done everything in my power to make sure I'm not giving you wrong advice, wrong direction. But when you step back and you let someone else do it, you're helping them grow. Cultivate someone else. Step back, pour into someone else. You don't have to do it all.
Wow. Beautiful advice. Thanks for that. Well, do you have a little bit more time to talk about leadership and creativity?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So, I study creativity in the healthcare setting in particular, and creativity, it's not a word we often associate with healthcare, but as you know, leadership often demands creativity. I'm curious if you can share an example of a time when you had to think outside the box to solve a problem, maybe a people problem or a policy procedure problem? What do you think?
Yeah. So I can think of lots of examples. Lots of fun examples that I really enjoyed. I think in my past life, working for an organization that had a QAPI program, and it was cumbersome. It took a long time. Nobody looked forward to so quality assurance, performance improvement, regulatory requirement for home health and hospice. It's not fun. People don't enjoy it. And so my thought was, and I was partnered with some other folks on the team, is how do we make this less cumbersome, more enjoyable, more engaging, more than just a checkbox meeting? And so we revamped the whole thing. We made it shorter. We found ways for our team to carry more of the load off of the operators instead of saying, you do all of it. That's not, and a lot of us hadn't been operators before, so we didn't understand. It's no wonder they don't want to do it. They've got so much on their plates. Let's help them.
Yeah.
And it changed the whole flavor of what QAPI was for the organization. It wasn't a burden. It was very intentional, and it was efficient. Like, you knew what to expect. You knew it was going to be quick, but you also knew it was compliance. And we had surveyors, multiple surveyors, who would say, that's the best QAPI program I've seen in a while. That's right.
Nice. Yeah. Like, you got it.
Yeah. So, that's just one. Gosh, and the creativity at being an entrepreneur is really almost to the point of taxing. Like, I'm not creative enough. How do I get more creative to market myself, to build my newsletter, make it more impactful, attract more readers? My LinkedIn, what types of videos can I post? What types of content can I create? And I've really had to think outside the box, research, ChatGPT things to figure out ways to be more creative, because there's so many ways out there to grow a business, and it doesn't have to be burdensome or cumbersome. It's just about learning how to do it.
Yeah. So it sounds like, creativity is such a big part of your world. You use creative problem solving all the time.
Yes.
Wow. So cool. Well, the last question I have for you is, if you could leave one piece of advice for emerging leaders in home care, something that's helped you lead through the gray with integrity, with impact, what would it be?
The first thing would be grace. You need to give yourself grace. I have a wonderful friend, and she always says, pace of grace. Take a pace of grace. So walk it out. Give yourself grace. The other thing I would say is, if you're in healthcare, we know we're in a heavily regulated part of the world, heavily regulated. You need to build a good foundation to stand upon. And you can't always rely on the place that you work for or whatever to build that. Part of that is on you, especially if you're a clinician. And so there are great resources out there for building a good foundation. Learning, where's the CMS website? Where do I find the regulations? There are wonderful continuing education platforms that will teach you the foundations of home health or hospice or home care or palliative. And so I think you should take initiative to kind of look at your foundation. Are there cracks in it? Do you need to reestablish? Do you need to build a new one? And start it, because that's only going to support your success as you continue to grow and climb the ladder, is a solid foundation.
Gosh, beautiful. fantastic foundational advice.
Yes.
Thanks for that. Well, Natalie, this has been such a great conversation. Before I let you go, though, my research assistant, do you know about my research assistant, Percy, the I'm in penguin? He has a couple of questions for you. Percy, are you there? Where are you at, Percy? I hear you. All right. Here are questions from Percy. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Percy's first question comes from a previous guest, which was Jennifer Maxwell of Maxwell Tech. And she wants to know, if you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, past, present, or future, who would it be and why?
That's a hard question. I think I could make a list of people.
Yeah. Who's on your list?
Well, I would love to talk to someone who's in the future, who, like, way in the future, who's lived through all the evolutions of AI and like what's happening to our Earth. And I would just be curious what they would say or what they would have asked that we would have done differently. Not that I don't have some ideas of what we should be doing, but what are their thoughts of how we could have made Earth a better place to live?
Wow. So AI and
think about it. I use AI all the time, and how did I even get through college?
Yeah. Microfiche in the card catalog.
Yeah.
Wow.
I would love to go back and talk to my grandmother again.
Yeah.
She passed really, really quickly, and I was kind of just stepping into my adulthood when she passed away, and I would really love to have had like an adult conversation with her.
Oh,
she was a lovely lady.
So sweet. Anybody else you're thinking of?
I mean, I think I would love to go way, way back and talk to one of the people who was coming off of the ship that crossed the ocean, to see, like, what did they look like? How bad did they smell? Like,
what was it really like?
What was it really like to be on a wooden boat for that long?
Yeah. Wow. Fascinating. Fascinating. Well, thank you for sharing those with us. So Percy's second question for you is, what question would you like to ask a future guest?
I would ask a future guest, how are you ensuring that your cup is being filled, especially if you're pouring into other people's cups? What are you doing for yourself to take care of you? Because I think we forget that sometimes, and then we get to the end of the week and we're like, why do I feel like this? And
yeah, you can't pour out of an empty cup. You've got to refill.
Right. Yeah. So at least take time to think about it.
Yeah. How do you fill your cup?
Well, I exercise. I'm very fortunate to get to work from home, so I walk my dogs pretty frequently, especially if I just need a step away moment. My husband and I love live music, so on the weekends we're usually somewhere listening to live music, maybe having a drink, and just kind of best friending with each other.
Yeah.
So, and we travel a lot. So we go on a lot of trips. We try to take one international trip a year. I go home to Kentucky to visit my family. And I make sure that I have that blocked out, because I am not going to get caught up in the rat. I'm not going to do that again. Yeah. The rat race. Nope. No, ma'am.
Nice. I love that. Well, Natalie, my friend, thank you for sharing your insights, your heart, your head with us today. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Where can our listeners find you?
Listeners can find me on LinkedIn. So Natalie Venable, or Thrive Healthcare Solutions, I have a website, thrivehealthtx.com. Any of those platforms, I'm accessible and I'm pretty quick to respond. They can email me. My email is on my website as well.
Okay.
And I thank you for having me. I know you've got lots of people to pick from, and I'm truly honored to be here.
Oh, well, thanks for saying amen. And I will list all of those ways. How about I list your website in the episode notes so people can get a hold of you. It's just been a treat for me to get to interview a friend on the podcast. So thank you.
So good to reconnect.
Yeah. And thank you to our listeners for joining us in this conversation. And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who could use a dose of inspiration and creativity. And please leave us a review. I read every single one. So until next time, keep saying I'm in to creativity, bold thinking, transformational growth, and meaningful conversations. May you be wildly creative in your life and leadership. I'll see you soon.